bring to the table so that we as the marketing agency and ObservePoint as the experts around their tool and the automation it could bring, plus the client on their business side could really work together to affect the change we wanted to have. We're trying to future-proof data collection. And today I'll share experience partnering with Mitsubishi Motors Canada. I'll talk to you about the approach and learnings that my team at NP Digital had working through this, and then Dylan will take us through the key features in ObservePoint that are being used to shed light on the customer journey, support collaboration, ensure reporting accuracy, and establish great data governance. So, like many industries over the last 4 years, especially with COVID, there's been a lot of disruption. The disruption continues to have a tremendous impact on the way Mitsubishi Motors Canada interacts with potential customers and with buyers. Production shutdowns earlier in the pandemic, shortage of semiconductor chips, affected the whole automotive industry. And if you were trying to buy a car over the last 4 years, you probably experienced this. There was also a sudden influx of people buying cars without necessarily going through the traditional journey and showing up at a dealership, a lot more online buying. Because of this, Mitsubishi recognizes the need to move faster with their data governance to maintain visibility into the changing customer journey and reduce any new friction points that these interruptions cause. Data governance is a constant challenge for all marketers, especially for those who work with many agencies, because there's a high risk of data being kept in silos. We started to work with Mitsubishi Motors earlier this year. They already had several agencies that they were working with. So this is something that I'm very familiar with. So Mitsubishi, like other brands, had two overarching questions that require them to mitigate the risk of data being kept in silos because they're working with so many different agencies, have so many moving parts. One, how can we better connect with our consumers? And two, how can we have sufficient visibility into the consumer journey? So there's three distinct but related forces that are driving them to prioritize addressing the change. One is the evolving privacy legislation that we heard a lot about just before this session. Another is the fragmentation of the ad tech ecosystem. It's really interesting. Another thing we learned in the presentation this morning is how the ObservePoint tool is going to evolve to help us understand all aspects of what's going on our website, not just the tagging. And especially with all this fragmentation, that sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to that. And then changing expectations from consumers around what brands do with their data. That's something else that we learned about. And in the presentation, something that struck me with the panel is they shared, as marketers, you need to figure out what your role is within your organization as your organization is dealing with privacy. So in my experience working with many of our clients, we as an agency may get pulled in, hey, what are you doing with this data? How long are you keeping it? Like, it's a little bit jarring sometimes. So the approach that we're taking with Mitsubishi and other clients to be a little bit more proactive to say, here's what we're thinking about the data, here's how we're using these data, and partnering with IT, partnering with privacy, and raising our hands and saying, let's work on this together has been a better relationship. So hope that you'll see some of that in the presentation today.
Karen, if I could comment on that, I just think being a privacy-centric and privacy-interested and privacy-invested partner of ObservePoint, if you're coming from the agency side, I think really distinguishes you. That you come to the table and you're saying, hey, I know you have 3 or 4 other agencies you're working with, and we're not going to add more to the chaos. We're actually going to bring some of the good side of privacy to the table and vouch for those consumers.
Another challenge that Mitsubishi Motors faced was related to recently revamping their national website. So this is the Canada website specifically. And with any new website revamp, you have to identify, validate, organize, and optimize all the tags and tracking codes. So, think about it for any of you who are having a responsibility with a website or affected by your company's website. What has to happen within your organization to maintain and improve tracking on your website following a revamp or even a small change?
So at our organization, it's very loose. Generally, the marketing team will come forward with a new tracker and say, hey, we got this cool thing we want to put on the website. And I generally reach out to compliance and say, hey guys, we're going to be adding a new vendor. And they say, okay, just make sure it's categorized properly in the cookie banner, and we move forward. Sometimes if it's a particularly large JavaScript or it's going to be affecting the DOM in any way, we do go through engineering to have them vet it to make sure it plays well with our code base. But it seems very loose to me anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very loose. So it's loose and it's reactive, right? So you're kind of just, as it happens, it's getting at it and hopefully at it in the best way possible and telling everybody like, hey, I'm doing this, so that someone can raise a red flag if one needs to be raised. And so I think, and our client, Claudia Maita at Mitsubishi, she said she was really excited to move forward with this project, but she told us, be adaptable, keep an open mind, be flexible. If we're going to affect change here, don't let our process get in the way of what we're going to achieve. But we did come with a process, and we said we want to start with looking holistically across 4 areas. We want to understand your customer journey, and really there's many journeys in automotive website. We want to understand the data collection, how data is collected, that impact on your reporting accuracy. We want to understand the collaboration across the agencies, and we want to understand the data privacy compliance needs. On the adaptable note, when we started with this client, I know a lot of the ObservePoint customers come from the Omniture days, but it's useful for anyone using any analytics platform, and Mitsubishi Motors uses Google Analytics. And they have premium, but they still had set a date in their mind that they wanted to switch over to GA4 by July 1st, and that they wanted GA4 to have parity with Universal Analytics. And we felt like this was just a huge confusion in the industry if anybody was following the UA to GA4, that you didn't necessarily want to have parity. You really needed to rethink your whole analytics and move into this new platform, and even if this is the right platform and all of that. But she had made this commitment to her organization that she would have GA4 parity by July 1st. And so to be adaptable and flexible, that was kind of one of the very first things that we approached, is just prioritizing what parity was actually needed and what we needed to do to hit that deadline, knowing that they would actually have another year with their universal analytics. Anyway, but that's the type of adaptability that we had to bring into this, like being able to pivot and move and reprioritize what we're doing to help the organization achieve what they had committed to. So is anyone here working with like an automotive brand, like a Mitsubishi or a Toyota or anybody? No.
I don't think I found anyone who walked around.
Okay. So working in automotive, and I've worked on a couple automotive brands in my career, it's a unique ecosystem, but it's a very established ecosystem. And there's certain journeys like build and price, find a dealer, like every single automotive, everyone selling a car is doing these same exact things. But it's being disruptive, but it's very consistent. You kind of know what you need to do, and there's different partners throughout it. So here, this is the national site I was mentioning, but there's also dealer sites, and every automotive company will have this. They'll have dealer sites, and then there's an inventory site. So just established as part of the journey is you're going to be handed off to different partners, different sites, and you have to be really thoughtful about how you bring this disparate data together to understand the consumer journey. And this was our starting point for the initiative, to understand and unify the data ecosystem. We started with where we knew that we needed documentation on the ideal state to be able to align with the other stakeholders and partners and ensure the right tracking tags are validated and maintained as part of this initiative. So what I mean is we don't want to run in and see every single tag, how is it tracked, what is it tracking, but more so, can we identify what the tags are, what tags we're expecting, and are those things tracking the right things? So that's why we're starting with the ideal state. And we wanted this initiative to not just be like a very internal and like academic exercise, but we actually wanted to improve Mitsubishi's marketing and media performance through doing this. And to do that, we needed to understand how and what data are being used in different ad and marketing tech at Mitsubishi Motors. Meanwhile, things are constantly changing at Mitsubishi Motors, and we need to ensure that the data variables are consistent throughout the journey, every day, and with every interaction. And this is why we had ObservePoint in mind from the start for automation, which was another point that they made in the panel earlier, that you can't do these things just counting on individuals, that you really need tools and systems to manage this stuff. So this initiative is an ongoing project with Mitsubishi now. It's not considered a one-time project. There's additional challenges that we are working through around new data privacy legislation being introduced in Canada. And Mitsubishi Motors needs to manage how the data they're collecting and integrating through the consumer journey affects their compliance. So the marketing team partners with other teams on prioritizing the privacy of their audience data to prepare their ecosystem to be flexible enough to meet all future requirements and changes. And it's not just a marketing challenge. No, that marketing is even taking this on as a marketing challenge, as we learned earlier, isn't quite right. Marketing has to figure out how they fit into this privacy and compliance challenge. And that's why we're working with IT and legal at Mitsubishi Motors to achieve these particular objectives. And what the Mitsubishi Motors team is trying to achieve is ambitious. So they, like I said, they're encouraging us to stay flexible and open-minded in our approach and partnership, knowing that they haven't done this before. And it's changing. So the Mitsubishi Motors team is not the only organization that prioritizes data governance, and especially as you can see all the groups here. And according to this survey, that a majority of respondents prioritize validation of technology categories related to their data governance, including web analytics, data management, testing and optimization, tag management, and advertising, just like Mitsubishi Motors. Okay, so getting into the steps we took, we sought to understand what their ideal state is. We wanted to know what tracking is expected to fuel their media and populate their analytics data reports. Collaboration is absolutely key here. We have to ensure that all partners are involved to share their tracking expectations across the key user journeys across Mitsubishi Motors sites. In fact, when we started this engagement, my idea was that everyone would get trained on ObservePoint across all the agencies, across everyone in Mitsubishi's organization. And this is one of the things I had to be flexible with, that they weren't ready for that. So we took ownership of this aspect, and then we'll roll out the training and access as more things are set up there.
2024 goals, guys. 2024 goals.
Come on, people. It's a great tool, but baby steps. So we had to collect existing analytics and paid media event documentation, as well as gain access to the analytics and tag management systems. And by doing this, we're able to get a holistic understanding of whether events are firing, how they're implemented, and what data they are expected to capture. So with an understanding of the ideal state, we're able to move forward with the audit. And I just want to emphasize that again. With an understanding of the ideal state, we're able to move forward with the audit. Moving forward, the audit, having that understanding and taking that time to build and align on that understanding ensures that when we have the recommendations, Mitsubishi Motors will benefit from them. They'll be able to see and communicate how what they're tracking deviates from what they should be tracking. And in that way, it'll be easier to prioritize the changes for them. So we base our ideal state understanding on that information that we got from the stakeholders throughout all aspects of Mitsubishi marketing. They shared the important user journeys, and I say they share, not they shared, because we continue to have these conversations. Important user journeys, existing documentation. Fortunately, Mitsubishi and their agencies have great documentation. Differences in expectations and data for paid search, paid social versus web analytics platforms. Ideally, these would match, but in reality, there are very important differences. How tagging and tracking are managed and who owns what aspects of that process. This is vital to ensure efficiency in executing any recommendations that result from the audit. So before going in and making any recommendation, we wanted to know who would actually implement these and what type of process do they have to implement. So with that ideal state understanding, we perform our first audit, and it's against those expectations that Mitsubishi has for the data being collected across the sites. My team uses Chrome developer tools just to peek at what is loading on the pages. But even with extensions, this approach does not scale. It can be tedious and time-consuming, and it's an approach that introduces human error. Think about it. Across multiple sites and tags, what level of robustness can you expect from an individual leveraging only a browser plugin?
64 years later, right, as John said.
Yes, I knew that. I was thinking, but I think they mentioned this in the presentation earlier. Okay, so that's why we primarily leverage ObservePoint. ObservePoint allows us to run audits of what tags are firing, what data is being collected, where and how at scale. And Dylan will give us a walkthrough of some of the tools we use later in the presentation. we compare ObservePoint's audit results against what configurations are in Mitsubishi's tag management system. They use Google Tag Manager. Now, based on this, we gather a thorough understanding of what events are firing for Mitsubishi, how they're implemented, what efficiencies exist, and what can be improved to better match Mitsubishi's expectations. And we use triangulation, my favorite buzzword right now, to inform our recommendations. The 3 points in this example we're converging from are the ideal state, how data and tags are firing from the sites that we see in ObservePoint, and how things are configured to fire in Tag Manager. Are you folks finding that you have to bring more and more different data sources together to provide a recommendation?
Any brave souls want to respond?
I felt this was interesting in this approach that the team was bringing together these different data sources, because it's the same thing that we see when we're doing performance reporting, especially affected by the same issues with privacy opt-outs, with changing in the consumer behavior, that there's actually multiple data sources that we need to look at to understand performance. And this idea of having a single source of truth is getting less and less useful. And so to see this actually in this governance process as well was interesting to me. There's a fourth data source that I don't mention here, which is the privacy compliance rules. So essentially, for these tags, which category should they belong to, and are they being governed within that category? After that initial audit, we had several recommendations to help Mitsubishi Motors implement. We broke these into quick fixes and longer-term opportunities, mid to long-term. Some of the quick fixes that we were able to provide had an immediate impact on marketing performance and increasing the speed of future data audits. So this included cleaning up the tag management system. Mitsubishi's tag management system was overloaded with tags and triggers, and we were able to improve this without affecting any critical tracking by removing unused tags and redundancy, removing redundant scripts, using presets and dynamic variables in the tag manager wherever possible. And then with every change that we publish in the tag manager, we've rerun a fully automated ObservePoint scan to ensure critical tracking is not affected. The nice thing about that is you can put rules, you can tell it what to look for, it'll flag for you if everything met what you expected or if something's off, so you can fix it. And then our long-term fix recommendations are more specific around the different prioritized journeys across Mitsubishi Motors websites. So all this work we've done so far in the audit, and this is ongoing, is important in providing Mitsubishi Motors, what our client Claudia says, is peace of mind. And knowing that the data they're collecting is as actionable as possible and the data collection does not negatively affect the user experience. Mitsubishi Motors is also thinking about how they improve their data governance for the future. So we're now running data teamwork workshops with Mitsubishi Motors to align all the key stakeholders in understanding additional data needs and the best way to implement these. This is incredibly important because the user journey for Mitsubishi doesn't end just on one website. The users are going to the partner sites, the dealership sites, and to the in-person dealer locations. So we've already thought about this, but let's think about it again with all the people, technology, and data demands. Is it reasonable for any one person or even one group to assume ownership of an organization's data future? Probably not. Workshops are a great tool to break big projects into small ones and assign responsibility for the parts that make up the whole. I think the challenge is to bring everybody together to help people prioritize the time, the many different responsibilities. But if you can get together in a workshop, put things down on paper, maybe you can get people to see how we can work together to have a brighter data future. For Mitsubishi, that's how we're using these workshops to create a brighter data future. What this also means is that we're leveraging ObservePoint to help ensure we continue to prioritize data governance and confidence for all the affected groups. I mentioned the roles, but also alerts. And I mentioned my desire for many different people to be in and using ObservePoint for the data that they are closest to. So in this scenario, ultimately, Mitsubishi Motors should be able to say, in this situation, this is the person who should get the alert to address this issue. Right now, my team is a little bit in the middle, but we'll work on that. And then the privacy monitoring features will be critical to ensure that they can strengthen their data privacy practices through audits and against their compliance criteria. Okay, Dylan will now walk us through some of the most important features that are part of the audit and maintenance, and he'll talk about the process implications of using ObservePoint.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So I have a pretty diverse audience here. I have, like Arthur, who I've worked with for years and is probably has a 2nd degree black belt in ObservePoint. And I have some people that might be seeing ObservePoint for the first time on a screen. So I'm going to try to approach that broad range and make this relevant for all of you. And talk about some of the core principles that really I think can everyone needs to understand, and share some anecdotes from personal experience working with, the Fortune 500, working with the Fortune 100, working with the Fortune 10, right? Like companies from a broad range of size and shape. And I also will say we work with, there are some smaller businesses, there are some medium-sized businesses, there are agency partners we're working with. We work with quite a diverse group, and these principles apply to that whole group. Let me see if this clicker is going to work for me, Zane. Okay, so I'm going to talk about web governance solutions, and I mapped each of these solutions to the requirements that Mitsubishi Motors Canada gave to MP Digital. So requirement number 1 was mentioned, is establish great data governance, right? Improve reporting accuracy, gain visibility into the customer journey, and support collaboration. So those are the 4 requirements. We're going to walk through solutions for each of those. So this will be a familiar report for those of you who are in ObservePoint all the time. It's a very basic, common report, but it's very, very powerful. By the way, all the reports we're going to show you today are not Mitsubishi Motors Canada's data. It's ObservePoint example data. And but this is a very good example of a realistic audit we might run. So you can see in the top left, we have a scan of 606 pages. You can see the number of unique tags, broken tags, pages, a lot of the information here on the page. I'm going to step you through piece by piece and talk about why it's important. So number 1 is summary metrics and trends. Super, super critical. Have you guys ever done a project and been like, oh man, we put all this effort in and I felt like we moved the needle, and then someone asks you, it's like, where'd you move the needle from? And they're like, oh yeah, we forgot to measure the beginning, the baseline, right? And it's like, oh, it's kind of too late to go back and get a snapshot of that. Well, ObservePoint is taking snapshots at whatever frequency you choose. So if you're scanning every week or every month, you have that trend. And we will store that data for up to, most customers use our extended data retention and store the data for up to 13 months. So you have 13 months of history and trends, and you can look back, how have we improved over time. And most people don't know this, but you can actually click on that trend line, and you can actually see a much more detailed view. You can see dates, timestamps, more specific numbers and metrics. So pro tip, click on the trend line. And I love seeing the change, obviously, since the last run. But if you drill in there, you're going to see a lot more detail. That's super valuable. So in order to be able to tell a story of where you're going, you need to be able to look back. You need to be able to look at where you started to measure success, right? So that's critical. That's a big part of establishing greater data governance, is setting that baseline so you know what greater even means, right? So a web governance principle that everyone needs to be thinking about is, what are the categories of technology, especially as privacy laws and regulations have forced us to categorize everything. And you know what? I talked to tons of our customers, and I asked, okay, so what's your source of truth? Arthur, what's your source of truth for how do you categorize a new tag that just came to your site? Arthur's the source of truth. Amazing. And Arthur's a great source of truth, by the way. I trust Arthur. But the reality is, it is subjective. It is very subjective. It is murky water. And ObservePoint's trying to make that a little bit easier by categorizing it for you, giving you a good sense of what the technology is used for. And hopefully from there, you guys can take it to the next level, right? Have your legal teams review it, have privacy experts review it, have an agency review it, have consultants review it. Work with your partners, work with the different internal partners within your organization to really understand those categorizations. And I think we're going to continue to do more and more on that, press on providing more context around those technologies in the future. So I need to click the pointer this way. Okay, this is a technology inventory. It's an inventory of all the tags and technology on your site, and it shows the distribution, right? And usually on a lot of these reports, it starts out 100%, and as you go down, we get to 3%, and we get to 1%. Okay, so there's these trailing, there's these small minority of pages that will have 10 or 12 technologies on 1% of the pages, and hopefully you guys are curious about those 1% of pages or those 2% of pages or 5% or whatever number it is, because that minority is probably the dark corners and crevices of your website that have third-party tracking, that have old embedded content that you weren't aware of and needs to be addressed. So make sure to scroll down is my pro tip for this slide. In this example, you can see we're missing Google Tag Manager on 5% of pages, and that's a core technology, right? And so we obviously want to set up rules, want to investigate those pages, figure out, is it a different CMS? Super common. We see large companies that have maybe dozens of CMSs or different instances of maybe even the same type of CMS, but they're all siloed, they're all segmented. So that's a big thing, is understanding that. And then you can see we even have privacy technology in here, and that's something you want to make sure of as well. Like, how can your privacy technology do anything if it's not even visible on the page, right? So really core feature here that helps you establish governance and gives you a picture. Most of you, if you've seen this for the first time in your life, you've never seen anything like it. And that's because you can't replicate this, right? Manually. You can't go and scour your entire website looking for every technology, doing inventory manually, not reliably, and not within 64 years, right? So some of you who aren't as familiar with ObservePoint, this is maybe miraculous, but to others who are used to it, this is just day to day. Last thing I'll highlight is every report we have drills into pages. So everything is filterable, clickable, like the whole thing is interactive, and it gets you ultimately to pages where the detail can be found, where action can be taken. You can click that button and export. You can click on any URL and it will give you page level detail, a lot of detail about that page. Everything we possibly know about that page is reported there. And as John mentioned, his vision long-term for ObservePoint, it's going to only grow. Like, we're going to tell you so much about these pages. And we'll highlight a couple of, we have a couple columns here highlighting features that are relevant to this report. Okay, the second requirement is improving reporting accuracy. So we use a system called rules for tag and variable rules, and we will basically create basic logic, make sure, hey, this tag is on every page, make sure it's present. And for Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or another analytics technology, usually we go deeper and we get into the variables and values that are collected within there. And for my customers, I recommend you start with the baseline. Okay, start with a simple foundation. What question do I need to answer? Well, are these technologies present on the page? Once I can check that box and make sure that's true and consistent and there's no rules failing, then go the next level deeper. Make sure there's a variable being captured for those core, those core tracking events or those core variables that matter for Adobe Analytics or for Google Analytics or whatever technology. And then go into a level deeper and say, okay, what are the values captured? And you can use regular expressions, you can use contains logic, you can use all kinds of magical tools to make sure that we're validating those pages correctly. But this report helps us govern and manage that, and you're going to see similar functionality, right? We show trends over time. You can measure success. You can see where you started. This is also clickable. So just another pro tip. Okay, don't forget, it's all clickable. All right. So that's critical. Showing the breakdown of those rules, their names. And then you can click into 28 and you'll see all 28 pages where those rules, where GA4 is missing. And then again, we get to page level detail. So make sure you're very familiar with the rules report. And I would add, Karen mentioned documentation. There's a wide range of documentation out there, documentation quality. So if you don't have good documentation to start, this can become very difficult. So talk to ObservePoint, and sometimes the best place to start is to actually look at ObservePoint and say, have ObservePoint help us make the documentation. There's a variable inventory report where we can see every variable collected on your website, and we can start there and say, okay, what is being collected? And then we can define, kind of mold that, define that documentation, help you. But if you're already coming with your own documentation, things move very, very quickly as we define those standards, and we have resources to help you accelerate that. Again, everything leads down to this page level detail, so we can find those pages missing, a core technology. The third requirement was gain visibility to the customer journey, and everything I've showed you until now is powered by something called ObservePoint Audits. This is ObservePoint Journeys, and journeys are where our technology will interact with the page and actually click and fill out information, and we do define those actions beforehand, but then once it's set up, it is automated. You can run it over and over again. In this example, we're filling out a form on ObservePoint's website, just a simple free trial sign up form, and there's a plug for a free trial. If you haven't done it, it's awesome. And the whole goal is to gain visibility, right? So we split up every single action we break them out and we show you the impacts of those actions. So one important thing, full page context. Having a screenshot tell you what's going on is huge. But a feature we released in the past few months is you can actually click into these and you can scroll to the bottom of the page, which is really nice. Like when it comes to journeys, right? Arthur's like, hallelujah, thank you. For journeys, it's huge because like imagine all those little pop-ups and banners that show up at the bottom of the page, right? Or maybe you're doing a journey that's related to privacy compliance and that footer link is like only visible if you're using a California proxy, or, you know, there's all kinds of dynamic elements to a page. And so being able to see the whole page in context of this test is a big deal. So again, we break out that action. So for that first action, we can see the tags, the variables captured in those tags, the cookies, the rules, action details. You'll notice under cookies, we've added cookie initiator data, which is a huge, huge game changer for customers, especially in journeys, because that's where a lot of changes are happening with cookies. So like imagine you're a e-commerce or retail company and you're doing add to cart or a purchase flow. Now you can see, you know, is that session ID cookie changing over time? Is their consent consistent? Their consent choices, is that consistently honored throughout that experience? I saw this working with one of the largest retail companies in the world where they went, you know, all the way through that purchase funnel, and then they got to this like other subdomain for checkout, and everything just blew up, right? All their consent preferences were forgotten, and tracking was everywhere, and the user had opted out at the very beginning. So understanding how that changes throughout this journey is a big deal. Most people, when they think about privacy, they think about audits, they think about large-scale testing of pages, but it's also about journeys. One feature I don't know that everyone's super familiar with, but something I love to highlight is comparisons. For journeys, it's actually really powerful that I can just click this toggle in the top right corner and it will show me, it'll just filter those rows for only the rows that have changes. So if you're trying to, you know, automate regression testing, if you're trying to just validate those changes and make sure you have a good anomaly detection solution, this is a great way to start. And we'll show this at the tag level and at the variable level. So here we have a run from September 4th, one from September 11th a week later. And we'll show you those anomalies and highlight those. Okay, supporting collaboration, number 4. And Mike Spencer, this is the feature I was going to show you last night, but we were all at the party, so we didn't do it then. But on the top left, you can see here an export, basic export showing, hey, here's all the tags, all the cookies in this example, and you can see the status column showing which ones are approved and unapproved. On the middle here is a feature we released this past year, which is publicly shareable reports. So if you're an agency partner of ObservePoint, this is huge, that you can share ObservePoint reporting data and even the exports associated with them. You can share that with anyone with a single link, okay? We don't need any information. They don't need to log in. They literally can copy that link from your email, paste it into an incognito window with no tracking history, no login, no anything, and they're in. They can access their ObservePoint report. And all the data I just showed you is accessible. So this is huge. So make sure to leverage it. You can either send it to people with a custom message, or you can just copy the link and provide your own context there. And so for partners, it's huge. Now let's also talk about internal partners, right? The people within your organization, within privacy, within other groups, they're not quite ready for their they pushed the goal to 2024. They're not ready to get into ObservePoint. Well, start by feeding them some awesome insights using these reports. By the way, everything, these links also capture the filters. So if you pre-filter a view, you say, okay, here's the unapproved cookies that we found in this latest audit. Send them that link and they'll pull it up and those filters will be applied. So you can kind of curate that view for them, which is really nice. Yeah, this was just a link, but they'll have full access to the exporting capability within the platform, including audit exports and any of the pages table exports. So there's a ton of export features just within audit reports. So shareability collaboration is huge. It's not just, I didn't want to just highlight these features for the sake of highlighting a couple of conveniences for you. I also want to say that centralizing, like giving everyone a central view of your website, is a huge deal. You've heard people talk about how there's so many people touching a website. There's so many different pieces to a website, so many components, multiple agencies supporting one company. Now, imagine a world where all those agencies can look at the same reports. All those agencies can look at the same, all those team members can look at the same data and the same representation of your website. And I'm really excited about some of the stuff product is building this next quarter and this next year. That's going to make it even easier to collaborate. Okay, Next step. So for Mitsubishi Motors Canada, these are some of the features that were really critical for them. I'm going to highlight a couple that are more forward thinking for Mitsubishi Motors as they mature. So one is making sure we're taking advantage of, we're not only expanding automated testing, but we're also adding governance. Like true governance needs to be automated, right? Like no human is going to look through these reports page by page. We need it to be automated. And so even though we collect the data, we also need to process that data automatically. And you're seeing here a privacy cookies report. So you can see the cookie on the left, the domain, the status, the consent category where we categorized it, and the number of pages. And you can see we have a Google cookie on a minority of pages that is unapproved. It's a newly discovered cookie. It was not on our approved list. And we need to investigate it and review it and determine if it should be approved, right? Or we need to address it and remove it from the site. I've seen a lot of people get to the stage of implementation and they slow down. They get real slow. And I don't know still trying to figure that out. But you can export most of this data, your list of essential cookies and tracking. A lot of it's already categorized within a consent management platform that you've already invested money in. And if you export that data, we make it very easy to upload into ObservePoint in like a minute or two, and then you're running. And then that approved list is there, and you just review this. You can subscribe to an unapproved cookie alert. Every time we detect a new technology, new cookie, you can be the first to know. And that's huge. That's a superpower in so many of your worlds to be able to say, yeah, there's a new cookie on our website. I got it. I'm all over it. And most people, don't understand the technology exists. They don't understand the capability, and that's huge. Very, very simple. But make this list happen. And by the way, when you first do this, if you export data from a consent management platform like OneTrust or TrustArc or many of the others that are out there, you'll notice that ObservePoint's going to find more. And that's just the reality. Like there's going to be more technologies that were not accounted for. The scanning technologies that those tools use to build an inventory are very limited. And ObservePoint is built for massive scale. So you'll find that we're going to find new technologies. So don't be surprised when you do find those new technologies. Just remember, Dylan told you today on September 26th at 11:28 that would happen. And I prophesied of that. So expanding that testing, and to really expand it, you can't just collect data. You have to process it at scale. In this report, we have those trend lines, right? We have alertability on each of those metrics. So take advantage of that. Make sure you go through and approve those technologies. And then once all you do is click the word approved and say, yep, this is approved, categorize it, and it's good to go. The second next step is removal of unauthorized technologies, okay? So we've done an inventory, we found the technologies. We're working to clean up our tag management systems. We're working to make the text tag lighter. So we're having a lighter footprint of the website. And most importantly, we're helping consumers protect their data. This is an example of a patent pending technology, a technology that we went, a method of displaying the story of a cookie we've patented or are in the patent application process. We've submitted it. And Dave can get into the nuance of patent applications if you ever want to talk to him about it. But you can show here at the top, we have the context of that cookie, right? What's the metadata we know about that cookie as far as what it's capturing, what attributes it has, including duration. By the way, I think it's GDPR. You can't have a cookie that endures or that doesn't expire within like 365 days. It's like a little nuance like that, little regulation requirements that you might not be aware of. And ObservePoint's trying to display that information here so you can create alerts around it and make it easier to capture. So that's another, and then there's HTTP only, same site secure. Those also align with a lot of the data protection principles that you'll find established in GDPR and other legislation. Okay, the cookie origin story, which is magic for those of you who have used it. It will just tell you in a very human readable way, like where this technology came from. So in this case, there were two initiators, meaning two technologies, separate technologies, set the same cookie on the page. And you can see the method is server-side HTTP. Hopefully that slide's readable. And the top one is a Vimeo player, and then the bottom was another Vimeo technology. So both of them are HTTP requests that we recognize. The top one is also recognized as a tag in our database, so Vimeo player. whether it's a tag in our database or not, we will tell you what set the cookie. And these are HTTP examples, but we'll tell you the exact line of code in JavaScript if it's a JavaScript file that's responsible for setting that cookie. Huge time saver. JD gave this example of this story in his opening remarks and talked about the days, I would say weeks, that was saved by this Fortune 10 company to respond to a legal inquiry about their technologies. So it can really save your bacon. In fact, the words from that particular customer were, ObservePoint just paid for itself today. That's what they said. They said that alone was enough value and significant enough to me and to my stakeholders that ObservePoint paid for itself today, which is what I love to hear every single time it comes up. And then another step to removing unauthorized technologies is making sure we not only do we do this with cookies, but we do it with tags. Many of you don't know this, many of you don't, that tags and cookies generally have a one-to-one relationship or a one-to-many relationship. There's a parent-child relationship here, and so do tags and tags. So as you're looking to remove a cookie, it might involve removing a tag. If you're looking to remove a tag, it might involve removing another tag. And so we go round and round, but we have a nice little family tree here, a genealogy of that cookie per se, that shows you the relationships. And we're going to make it easy for you to find those relationships, address them. And you'll find as you do this that you're going to find hard-coded technologies, old technologies that were embedded on the page. Maybe there's third-party content that a content manager, someone on Adobe Experience Manager put on the website and had no idea the implications, and that it's basically unguarded by consent management technologies. So be wary of those. You're going to find those, and that's another prophecy that I will make is you will find them. I'm going to pass it back to Karen. Yes, we'll do the honorary changing of the mics.
So, again, ongoing initiative, and thank you for going over all those features. They're really cool and not a one-time project. So we're learning along the way, and I want to share the tips that we're gaining that could help other organizations who are on the same journey. We have 6 tips. One is to map all your data flows for capturing data along the user journey. There's sensitive user data in there that you are responsible for as a marketer. Audit the tags frequently and with each change to make sure they continue to track as expected. That's what Dylan just showed us, is how ObservePoint can help in the process. If you're tracking data but it's not accurate, then it's not useful and it's even potentially harmful. 2, data governance requires collaboration with partners. Avoid silos and clarify terms so all partners are speaking the same data language. We have at NP Digital some guiding principles. One of them is think big. And in this case, we have to think small and we have to sweat the details. So we have to go a little bit against our other guidance here. But we have to know the details at a really granular level and prioritize those according to the big picture. For Mitsubishi, the big picture is how can we better connect with consumers and how can we ensure we have sufficient visibility into the customer journey. And the details are with the people involved, the tags in use, the data populating in those tags, the cookies, and then the cookie to tag relationship and the tag to tag relationship. Those are all important. Don't hesitate to involve multiple teams. It's not easy, but it's critical. And the information that those other teams have, especially those closest to certain data being collected, is not something that you can make up. The technology should be helping us work better together. It should be requiring less human involvement, but we still have to talk to each other to problem solve. Anticipate constant evolution. Things will not go as planned. Privacy legislation is a moving target. The ad tech ecosystem is under constant change, and consumer expectations will continue to evolve. And then done is better than perfect. So don't let not having a perfect map for data governance get in the way of you finding opportunities to affect change in your organization. There's a lot of imperfect things around this topic within organizations today. And in marketing specifically, we know that we need to be responsive. We know that we have to react quickly. And establishing great data governance to provide the peace of mind that the decisions in your org are supported by quality data is a good first step. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We're going to thank you, Karen, especially. She flew in from San Diego. Really appreciate her coming and attending this conference and representing NP Digital. For those of you who don't know NP Digital, by raise a hand, who's heard of NP Digital? Okay, so just a quick introduction. Do you want to give a quick introduction, Karen?
Well,
And then we'll do questions. We'll do Q&A.
Sure. I teased it in the beginning that we're a young agency. We're maybe 5 years old right now, growing. We're on those fastest growing agency lists, and I have a global footprint. We are doing end-to-end digital performance marketing, winning awards, doing a lot of thought leadership. We actually have our own conference, virtual conference going on today. If you're interested, I can hook you up to attend those sessions after this is done, because everything's recorded.
Awesome. And then I was going to give a plug for the ObservePoint free sample audit. It's something you can use, you can share, you can use it on a small business website, you can use it anywhere you want. And we have it on our website available as well. But for those of you who haven't done a sample audit, great thing to try today. You'll get your results within 5 to 8 minutes. And you can see all those reports we just showed you today for your own website. So thank you, Karen. I want to open it to questions. I want to take advantage of Karen's expertise, her experience, and exposure. And then I'm also available for questions. So I can bring the microphone around if anyone has a question. Yeah, Arthur.
Thank God you're here.
How do you find a company's maturity and change management affects their ability to do data governance, or is there no relationship because they tend to be siloed?
So that's an interesting question. And from, obviously from my experience, I've been at NP Digital maybe 4 years now. And prior to that, I was working in a WPP agency called Mirum that was very much in digital transformation, change management, et cetera, et cetera. When I was there, I didn't work on the performance marketing side. I wasn't so involved with, okay, here's our media budget, let's spend it to drive customers for this website. It was more about implementing and improving the brand's ability to measure the impact of their marketing. And so I really wanted, when I moved to NP Digital, I'm going to work with these marketers, and they're going to just plug in to these amazing data ecosystems that I'd been setting up with these enterprise brands and this other agency, and they'll be able to drive this great performance. They'll stop creating these extra reports that create noise within the organization, and everything's going to be great. And what I'm realizing is, as I engage with these brands, and we have mid-market to large brands, and we have a small business division as well, is that the digital transformation has not quite occurred. It hasn't quite landed, and the agencies aren't quite able to plug in as you would think they should. So I think it's just that there's just change. It's constant. Is anybody great at it? Some are better than others. It's helpful. I think the data is more trusted in those scenarios, but it's not something that I can expect in any scenario. Does that answer? Yeah.
Good question. We have just a few more minutes before we break for lunch. Any more questions? Yeah. What about Mike?
I'm just curious to get your perspective on, as you mentioned, working with multiple different brands and whatnot, and kind of what challenges have you faced in, you work with a new brand, maybe they don't have a very good culture of data governance, or maybe they're siloed into multiple teams that have kind of a, difficulty getting on the same page. What sort of, I guess, tips or tricks do you have for getting those teams coordinated and establishing sort of a data governance framework at that company so that everybody can work together moving forward?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and the approach that we've landed on as a team is to start with, we call it measurement strategy consultation. That's what we start with. And essentially, we have a questionnaire, and we try to share that with our direct point of contact. And part of their job is to identify the other people that we need to be working with to answer these questions and bring it back to our team so we know what we're working with. And then we put that into essentially a PowerPoint that says, okay, this is your marketing ecosystem. These are the data that are available. these are the metrics that are important for showing our performance. Here's how we're going to pull them together. These are the places where there are gaps, and we're going to roll out essentially, I don't know, I don't like this, but like V1, and then we'll iterate on that and improve. And so we learn, and we know that V1 is not going to be perfect, that some people are going to throw up when they see V1, but what else can we do coming in trying to show our performance? So that's how we're approaching it. I'm open to feedback.
I'll add a couple of thoughts and then we'll get to Amy. I was going to say that some organizations form a data governance council, and I think that's only initiated by proactive people. I think it really takes a lot of education, enablement, to answer your question, Mike. And I think we heard a lot about pioneers today, more than you thought you would get. Welcome to Utah, by the way. And I think sometimes we are pioneering a lot of this. Like we're carving new paths, paving new roads. And I think that, but as we do it, we're streamlining the processes. And I also think that's where the greatest opportunities are, is in pioneering. I think it's not in doing the same thing that's always been done. I think that's a great way to distinguish yourselves and your careers, is do something that's never been done, to make a significant change within your organization, and to be a part of that cultural change and being a contributor there is huge. So I would say it starts with you, it starts with education, and then helping other companies understand what it might look like, because they probably have never heard of what it looks like. And you might need to show examples of other companies and how they do it. And that's another reason why you should talk to the person next to you or talk to experts like Arthur's been doing this for a lot of years, and see what they can share with you. So Amy had a comment.
So in my other job, I am a data governance consultant. So this is a question we get literally all the time, is I have to ask 7 teams to agree on something. And we were hired by one of those teams who has one idea in mind of exactly what they want out of this and exactly why it's the best thing ever. The other teams don't care. And so the way we approach it is, it's like any other marketing or sales pitch, is not why do I think this product is great? Why would it help you? It makes your life easier. It gets you in less trouble. It just improves anything. It just is good for you. Take everything I think that's good about it, take that out of the equation, and do a marketing pitch to the other people. Why is legal going to want this? Why is marketing going to want this? Why is the back-end software, database development team going to want this? And just really do a sales pitch across the organization and get everybody on the same page, not exactly why they need this, but the fact that they need this, and then that makes the collaboration a whole lot easier. And then all of this eventually requires end-user support for data governance. Don't put stuff in random places on your desktop, put it in SharePoint. So a training and like another internal marketing campaign about, this is now our value, this is what we're going to do, here's how to do it, and take away as much friction as you possibly can. Make that the easy thing to do. So.
Yeah, I'll also add, just lean on ObservePoint, lean on our expertise. We've seen a lot of companies. We've worked with JD, I think, threw up a number. I can't remember the number, is 600 plus enterprises in the history of our company, something like that. So we've seen a lot. I have Jared had a comment here.
Hey, Karen. I've actually worked with Karen a bunch on calls, but I haven't actually introduced myself yet in person. So nice to meet you, Karen. I'm curious, and we probably don't have time for a full answer to my question just as we're wrapping up here. So I'll try to shorten how I frame it. But a big issue with data governance culture, which we've talked about a couple times in this presentation and some of the questions, I feel comes often from leadership or champion churn. And I'm curious, on the digital, on MP Digital or agency side, do you feel like you're a little bit protected from that and helping those companies that you're working with be a little protected from that disruption when they have some employee churn? Are you maybe susceptible to it as well, of just, being able to interact with them? Yeah, I have more to it, but I guess just simply with that, I'm just curious what that looks like working with an agency and trying to help people with this digital governance culture.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is something I've been reaching out to ObservePoint on recently. Help, HIPAA. With HIPAA, our clients are getting privacy consultants coming in, essentially asking them to remove quite a lot of tracking from the website. And their competitors, like we can look at, with ObservePoint, we can actually look at their competitors, what they're doing, what tags they have on the site. And the marketers at these companies are saying, hey, if I can't track anything, I think I will leave this company and work in a marketing environment that's not, governed by HIPAA, where I can have data and I can do my work. And so that's the churn that I'm feeling right now, is that we will, if these companies are not handling their compliance, their governance, they're not working with partners that will sign the BAA, that is very disruptive and to doing the marketing that we're used to being able to do. And that is the place where I see the agency can be helpful in guiding the clients to continue to do marketing in a privacy compliant way. I haven't experienced a churn that you're specifically talking about. Okay, yep.
Awesome. Just a round of applause for Karen. Thank you so much again.